Good evening. Last week, I had an item that I wanted to share with you, but I didn't because I ran out of time. But I felt the information was important enough that even though it was shaykh to last week, but it's something that I want to deposit by you in your minds and in your hearts. And there will be a tekufa that you will be able to use it and enjoy the concepts. So I feel, so please forgive me, I'm going to take the first 5 or 7 minutes. Last Friday was Purim Katan. Now, if you look in Shulchan Aruch, the only thing that Shulchan Aruch says is that we don't say Lamanatseach, we don't say Tachnun, but any mitzvah maisi, like Megillah or Shalach Manis or anything like that, we don't do. We don't have any type of mitzvah. And Tzaddikim said that Purim Katan in many respects is bigger than the regular Purim, because this is a world of Gashmias, and the less the Gashmias, the bigger the Kedusha. So said the Tzaddikim that since Purim Katan has no, in their mitzvahs which are Gevaldik, but there's still Gashmias, the Shalach Manis and the Sudas Purim, but when you come to Purim Katan, there are no mitzvahs Gashmias. And for that reason, they say in that respect, Purim Katan is bigger than Purim. Now, we know that if someone says Shemona Esrei on Shabbos by Mincha, that many say is the biggest Shemona Esrei of the week. Not only because it's Ravin de Ravin, that the height of Shabbos as it's going through Shabbos up, but that's the reason why that Shemona Esrei is the smallest, because there is so much Kedusha that the words are limited, and it's the least words of any Shemona Esrei. On the other hand, if you go to the regular weekday Shemona Esrei that we say 3 times each and every day, it's the biggest Shemona Esrei because it's Chol, it's weekday, and the more Chol, the more Gashmias, and that's why there's more words. Now, we know that Purim comes out once a year. Purim Katan is not every year. It's only when there's a Shana Mu'beres. So maybe it comes out, let's say, 3 times in 10 years. So they say, Tzaddikim pointed out, that's why the day is so big. And the day is so big because even its occurrence in Olam Hazeh, of all the Yomim Tovim, like we have 260 or 270 days of weekday, then we have 60 or 65 days of Yom Tov and Shabbos. Purim, we have 1 day a year, but it's every year. But Purim Katan only has a couple times every 10 years. So even in the Gashmias world, when we have Purim Katan, it come because it's so high in its shoyrish of Kedusha that it comes out the least amount of days here in Olam Hazeh. The bottom line is that Purim Koton is a day, and the Svarim say that, so with all that we've said, that it doesn't have its own mitzvahs and gashmias and all that, but in Hashpa Lamala, it's as big and bigger, the Svarim say, than even regular Purim. Now, we know that there's a halacha in Purim that koila poshet yad noisnilo, that when someone puts out their hand, you have to give. You can't say no. Doesn't mean you have to give a $5 bill. You can give a quarter. You can give $1. But you're not allowed to say no. And the Rabbanu Shalom keeps the Torah himself. So if the halacha is that kol ha-poshet yad noisnim lo, that when a person stretches out their hand, you have to respond. So when we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu on Purim Koton or on Purim for something, he keeps his own Torah, and we are poshet our yad, and we ask for something, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to give it. And that's why the day remains so tremendous. Now, the Chidushei Harim once said to his Hasidim that he began with a short story. There was a man, and it wasn't a mushal, it was a real story. There was a man who was riding in his wagon, and he was with a little bit of money because he was on his way to the marketplace to buy schoira, to buy merchandise. And on the way there, he heard in the forest crying. So he was curious, what's happening that there's such noise from this crying? So he got out of the wagon and he followed the sound till he came to not only one man sitting there, but he came to an entire family. And he asked them, why are you all crying? He said, well, we had a house and we rented it, and the pirates came and we didn't have the rent, so he kicked us out. And we're sitting here in the middle of nowhere, and if it rains, we have no protection. We're just here, and what HaKadosh Baruch Hu will want for us, that's what will happen. So the man, said the Chidushei Harim, took out the money that he had prepared to buy merchandise, and he gave it to them. And it was enough to pay their rent. So in Shamayim, there was a call in Shamayim that whatever this man who gave his last dollar to take away the tsar, the yagon, the anacha of this family, whatever he asks for, we're going to do or grant. So, a group of malachim in heaven, when this group of angels of malachim said, this guy was moiser nefesh, we're going to give him whatever he wants, another group of malachim stood up and said to them, well, what are you going to do if he asks for tchiyas hamesim? So the angels that said we should give him whatever he wants said that we're going to put him in a matzav that he'll always be shikr. And a shikr does not come forth with special requests. He's drunk. And the Baal Shem Tov, who lived 100 years before the Chidushei Arim, told a man who came to him who was destitute, and he had to marry off daughters, and he was lost. So the Baal Shem Tov said, in the next town, there's a man in the bar, and he's sitting there drunk. And most of the day, that's what he is. He's drunk. Go over to him and bring hot coffee, black coffee, that he should sober up a little bit, and tell him your matzav, and he's going to give you a bracha. And this man, after that bracha, remained kol yemei chayav, the rest of his days, a gevir adir. Not just well-to-do, and not just rich, but fabulously wealthy. So the Chidushei Arim ended this story when he was speaking to the Hasidim, and he said, the story I just told you is the story of Purim. Purim is so big that people could ask for whatever they want. So a mitzvah of getting drunk was given to Klal Yisrael, so they shouldn't come and ask for things that it's not the time, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want it to happen. But you should know that Purim Katan has the same power without the drunkenness. So I just wanted to say that because Purim Katan indeed is above and beyond the days of the year and even Yomim Tovim, and that's why it is so big. And all the Shefa Rav that came down to Klal Yisrael on Purim Katan should come to the surface, and that each and every Yid should be able to be Zoicha and to see it in his lifetime, the grand flourish of all of the brachos and the shefarav that comes down to them. Now, we know that in this parsha, Parshas Kisisa, the unfortunate story of the Egel Azov, the golden calf, happened. And I say it's a sad story because after Matan Torah, had they never made the Egel, Mashiach, the Geula Shlema, would have come here. So says the Arizal, so say many, and the Tikkun Sholem of the Chet of Adam Arishon would have happened. And we're going to talk for a few minutes about this Maisa HaEgel. And I will open with a kasha that Kadmonim asked. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when Moshe Rabbeinu was up on top of the mountain, he said, Saru Maher, quickly go down, ki shichei samcha, Klal Yisrael is falling in big time to big averis. So the Kadmonim ask, Moshe Rabbeinu only broke the luchos when he got down at the bottom of the mountain and he saw the Egel v'es hamacholos, that all the dancing, and he broke the luchos. So the question is that they ask, why didn't he, just as soon as HaKadosh Baruch Hu told them, Shichei Samcha, that they are doing terrible things, Why didn't he then and there just break the luchos? Why did he wait till he got down? Because Moshe Rabbeinu was the everlasting goodwill ambassador for Klal Yisrael. And Moshe Rabbeinu held that even if right now, of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was saying it, so it was 1,000% emes, that even if it's accurate and it's 100%, but certainly Klal Yisrael are in the middle of doing tshuva and enjoying Malava Malka, which is a David Malka Meshicha. It's the Seuda of David HaMelech, Malka Meshicha, and there's no question that they're doing tshuva. But when he came down the mountain and he saw the egel, the es hamacholos, the instruments, the dancing, they have no hira tshuva. They have no problem. They feel they can carry the power of everything that he sees, and it's not such a problem. That's when he broke the luchos. But up on top of the mountain, he thought for sure he'll come down, they'll be busy crying, and they'll be busy concerned for what they did. When he didn't find it, he actually broke the mecholos, broke the luchos, excuse me. Now it says that he said to the Bnei Levi, Mi Lashem Eloi, Vayasru Elav Kol Bnei Levi. And the Bnei Levi stood up and he said, take your swords and go from the beginning of the machana to the end of the machana. And the pasuk says, Vayiplu min ha'am bayom ha'hu Keshloishes alfei ish. Around, the chaf means like around 3,000. Now there's no magefa recorded in the Torah or in Tanakh that if they say the number, they don't say around. This is Baruch Kodsham, or with Nevuah, that these psukim were written. So why would it say around 3,000 fell from Klal Yisrael on that day? Around makes it sound like you're estimating, that you don't have an exact number. And we know the Torah is perfect, and whenever they say a number by a magefa, it was exactly the number. But said the Skolya Rebbe Zecher Tzadik V'Kadosh Livrocha, that when Adam Arishon did his Aveira, there were 3 olives that were nifgam. The olive from the word Adam fell away, and you were left with Dalid Mem, which means blood, dam. The second olive that was nifgam was from emes. The olive fell away and was affected, and the mem tov that remained, spelling mace. And then the third olive was kosnos or vayal bishem, that the olive of or became a regular letter with an ayin. And when we have in the Torah kosnos or, it takas with an ayin. Even though in the Sefer Torah of Reb Meir, he kept the olive in his Sefer Torah that he learned from, because he was so big, Reb Meir, that he was able to encompass all the inyanim of that kosnos or, the olive, vav, Reish. So that is how he touched and translated the pasuk. Cause that vayiplu min ha'am bayom hahu, that it fell from the people, kish loishes, like the 3 alfei ish, the olives, the 3 olives of alfei of Adam and Emes and Or, they were nifgam. Ish, Moshe Rabbeinu in many madrashim is called Ish. So they were negatively affected. These 3 olives, and that's why the pasuk says around kish loishes, because we're not referring to the number of the people. I mean, b'pashtus we are, but the drush is that kish loishes alfei ish, that the 3 olives that were in such a high madrega fell from the madrega because of his eating and became the Gabbai to Moshe Rabbeinu, and it affected each and every one. And that's why 3,000 died, but at the same token, it was a greater reference to the 3 olives that wasted away to the side, because the greater picture of what happened with the 3 olives was what the Torah wanted to convey, that it would have had a tikkun shalem, but it didn't happen because of the 3 olives that were nifgam, and with the egel it was never fixed. Rav Shimon Schwab, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, when he was younger, when he was still a bacher, before he got married, he went and he spent a Shabbos by the Chofetz Chaim in Radin. The Gabbai let him in. He was like a 20-year-old bacher, and to speak for a few minutes with the Chofetz Chaim. The Chofetz Chaim asked him, "Are you a Kohen?" So he answered and said, "No, I'm a Yisrael." So the Chofetz Chaim persisted and said, "And why aren't you a Kohen?" He said, "Because my father wasn't a Kohen." "And why wasn't your father a Kohen?" Because of my grandfather. And the Chofetz Chaim kept pressing this point. He even went so far to say, "Oh, you're Yisrael, so when Mashiach will come, I will be," he was a Kohen, the Chofetz Chaim, "I will be on the inside doing the avodah and doing this and doing that, and you're going to be standing on the outside." So Rav Schwab stopped at that point, because the Chofetz Chaim never in his life went and made somebody feel bad, and he was beginning to feel bad. But the Chofetz Chaim said to him, "I want to say to you a message, and hopefully your whole life you're never going to forget. You are destined to become a Rav and to become a leader by Klal Yisrael. And many times there's going to be an issue that comes up, and you're going to have a chorus of a lot of people who are saying differently than what you said. But you said what you want to say because you feel that was Das Torah, that was the halacha, that was what should have been said. But the pressure will be on, because there's no such thing as leadership without pressure. So I submit to you that just like the Bnei Levi stepped forward, even though it was an unpopular time, and they were not happy that they had to take a sword and start walking through the Machna and killing this one and killing that one. But that was the right thing to do at that juncture after the Maisa Ha'egel. So I want to say to you that when you are under the pressure of tzibur, but you have thought through what you should or shouldn't respond to the tzibur, you have to stick to it with backbone. And you cannot be wishy-washy. And then you will succeed with your flock, with the klal. The point being, he said, that Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't popular at all, and here he called on the Bnei Levi, Mi L'Hashem Eloi. But he knew it was the right thing that had to be done at that juncture. And even though it was not the most popular stand, but a parent, a teacher has to be consistent and has to have the backbone to stand up for what he feels 100% is correct and right. Now, in this Sedra, we have the Machzis HaShekel. And just like by the menorah that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't fully understand the menorahs, HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed him the menorah shalish, and at the end even that didn't do it. He told him to take the chunk of gold and throw it in, and out came the menorah. So by Machzis HaShekel it says the same thing. Now, the menorah, you could say, was maybe more intricate and he didn't have a clear picture in his mind, but a coin, Machzis HaShekel. So, why didn't he simply understand that it wasn't such a deep thing and the idea of a flat coin? But the answer is Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't understand L'chaper al nafsho sechem, how money could become the kapara for Klal Yisrael in their daily lives, and they have certain averis, and here this Machzis HaShekel l'chaper, as the pasuk says, al nafsho sechem. So, what bothered Moshe Rabbeinu? What bothered him was that money is a force that can bring people into Gan Eden, or Neba Chas V'Shalom Lo Aleinu Lo Aleichem, or into Gehenna. Because money can elevate somebody. He gives the tzedakah, and the tzedakah is tatzil mimaves. He was supposed to die that year, and because of all the tzedakah he gave, he's not dying, and he's going to be Ma'arich Yomim. But on the other hand, you see that money, so with money you can do unbelievable. You can bring oneself to the top of the fence. But at the same token, that money has broken families, that people over a Yerusha, $20,000, they're ready to break the family, and the cousins don't go to the chasnas, and the worst nebuch, machloikis, and terror for money. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to show him fire, because fire could burn down a house. But fire can cook food and make people warm in a freezing winter. So it was that same message, that it is something that how you handle it will be the outcome of its effect. You leave a candle in a house and you go to sleep, well, the house could nebuch lo aleinu lo alechem burn down. But at the same token, we can have delicious sudas, l'kovit Shabbos v'yom tiv, or feed aniyim with the fire that's there cooking the food. So that was the message of the machzis hashekel. Now, the word machzis is spelled memches tzadik yud tov. V'nosnu, which is in the beginning of our parsha, and this, by the way, the beginning of the parsha, is when we have Parsha Shkolim. This is what we read. They take out the second Sefer Torah, and they read this inyan of what Machzis HaShekel is. And it's L'chaper al nafsho seichem. And the Meforshim say, it says V'nosnu, because when you give, you take back more than you're actually giving. And that's why the word V'nosnu, if you read it frontwards or backwards, it spells the same V'nosnu. Because when you go forward and you think you're giving of yourself, when you take out money and give it, that V'nosnu, it's coming right back to you and the schusim and the hatzlocha and the harchava and everything, besides all the segulos of the tzedakah tatzel mimoves and everything else that comes with it. Now, the word machzis, the outer letter, the middle letter is a tzaddik. The outer letters is a mem and a tov. It spells mace, dead. The next letter, the second from the beginning and the second from the end, spells chai, a ches and a yud. And in the middle is a tzaddik. And Kadmonim said that somebody who is makusher and bound up in his life with being close to a tzaddik and benefiting in his ruchnias and davening by how the tzaddik acts and does his avodah, so then it's chai. You're right next to the tzaddik, the ches on one side and the yud on the other. But if chas v'sholem, someone is never near tzaddikim, they think, I know how to keep the Torah, I know how to paskin a shaila, I don't need the tzaddikim. That's the furthest from the tzaddik, the letter tzaddik in the middle, the mem and the tov, then he's a walking dead man. Because growth has to come from hashpah, someone who was a mashpia. And that's why there were tzaddikim that said you have to have a mashpia, which means a person could be already 90 years old. And he lived through who knows what he lived through. But as long as he's makusher with a tzaddik and he has a mashpia, he can continue to grow ad mea ve'esrim shana. If someone feels that they sever their shaykhs with tzaddikim, they don't like something that happened, the samach mem, the yetzer hara, is awake and available the first second to pull somebody down with the narishkeit and the shtusim that he puts into the guy's head. Oh, that's what the guy said to you? Let's not have anything to do with the person ever again. You know, those type of thoughts are the things that bring down a yid. But when you're under the hashpah of tzaddikim, you don't think like that and you don't live like that. Now, the Rosh Yeshiva of Yaakov Kamenetsky, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, asked, I mean, Rashi and others talk about, why does it say we have a parsha of Vishamru B'nai Yisrael es HaShabbos? And it starts off, Ach es Shabsosai Tishmori, you should keep Shabbos. So everyone's trouble, Shabsosai is a plural. You just should have said, Ach es HaShabbos, as it says in other places. Why is there a plural? But the Gemara says that if Friday night when you walk home from shul, every yid is escorted by two malachim, by two angels. One is bad and one is good. And they escort the person, and if a person could see malachim, you'd see on the street what's doing when a group of Yidden come home, how many malachim are on each side of each and every Yid. And the Gemara says that when they come home, if the table is adorned and beautified with all the flavor and the time of Shabbos with kavod and with dignity, then the malach who's good calls out that you should be zoicha to next week a Shabbos like this, so beautiful, so wonderful, and the bad malach is forced to answer amen. And if chas v'sholom, there are no tishtacher, there's no bechers, it's a house that still are not steeped in Kedusha Shabbos. So to that, the bad malach says that next week should be the same lack of total ruchnias and Kedusha Shabbos and Hanhogas Shabbos and everything that comes with it. And the first malach is forced to answer amen. So you see how far-reaching the power of the staples, the cementing factor of Klal Yisrael, Shabbos. I mean, without Shabbos, what's the whole Klal Yisrael? But it starts off with stepping out of shul and coming home. And that's why it says, Aches Shabsosai, plural, because we're referring to the two Shabbosos. That if it's a beautiful Shabbos, you've got a second Shabbos the next week, and everyone has to answer amen. But the opposite of Chas v'Shalom, it's not so good, then Nebuch the Yid has a bigger struggle to get back to where he belongs. And Aches Shabsosai is referring to that second Shabbos, both on the good side and both on the red side, the negative side. Now, and so said the Rosh Yeshiva. Now, on the Egel, Hashem said, Saru Mahir, quickly turn and go down. And Meforshim on that pasuk say that the crux of why there was so much trouble that they fell in with the Egel was because it was always a bechina, of Mahir. That means a Yid is supposed to have consideration for whatever he does. Now, it doesn't mean when a person is taking the candle to light the Hanukkah menorah or the Megillah to lein on Purim that he has to stand there for 20 minutes being machavan who knows what. But he has to take the few seconds or the minute to set the dial that he's about to do a magnificent mitzvah. And we wanted as a nachas ruach HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if it's a nachas ruach HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we as Klal Yisrael will participate and bask in the glory of that mitzvah because there was kavanah given to it. And that they say that the Yetzer Hara never ever is short. Because as long as he can capture the person, start drilling in, go here, do that, he's able to pull through. Now there's a question that's asked, why didn't Klal Yisrael, if they thought that Moshe Rabbeinu disappeared, he died, and the Satan was trying all sorts of tricks, the Satan put out a Aron in Shamayim that they saw floating with Moshe Rabbeinu. Oh, he's gone. So why didn't they just take the next one in line? In other words, when you're on a plane and if Chas v'Sholom, the pilot, suddenly doesn't feel well, he goes to the co-pilot. That's what he's sitting there for. And sometimes there's even two co-pilots besides in the plane, even though they did some cheshboning that for the 3-hour flight to have all three pilots sick at the same time, and though is only 1 in 16 trillion that such a thing would happen. But the idea is, why didn't they turn to Aaron and say, okay, now we think he's gone? How about you? Chor, who was a tzaddik gomer and Nebuch, they killed him because he got up and he said, Klal Yisrael, you were just by Har Sinai. What are you doing? They killed him. So the answer the Mefarshim say is because often when somebody falls, that it's a free fall. When a person walks off a cliff, he made a misstep. He didn't realize that he was at the edge of the cliff. And he takes one more step. There's no turning back. If he's on a cliff and he took the wrong step, he's in big trouble. And that's what the Mefarshim say over here, that there was such a forcefulness of the Yetzer Hara and the Samach Mem, because he saw the stakes were so high, that this could be the Gula Shlema, and I don't want that. So the stakes were so high, so when it happened with Klal Yisrael, they couldn't even see straight. They were so engrossed in the making of this ego, even though the Ramban says it wasn't Avodah Zarah, because they wanted just an intermediary area, that they wanted someone like Moshe Rabbeinu, who could be the go-between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael. So it wasn't Avodah Zarah, like Lahavdal Elef Avdalos. Catholicism, being a Catholic, is real Avodah Zarah. But if someone is a Muslim and they hold of Mohammed, they held he was a prophet. They didn't hold that he was a god, that he was a Kodesh Baruch Hu. They held he was And they got their religion from us because Muhammad came to Yerushalayim on Yom Kippur and he saw them davening 5 times Yom Kippur, and that's why these Muslims all daven Lahavdil, Elf Havdalas, whatever they do, 5 times every day, and they do it bowing down on the ground, because when he came in to Yerushalayim, he saw everyone davening and bowing down and koirim and koirim and koirim, whatever. But it wasn't Avodah Zarah, tzaddikim said. It was a different religion, and it was a different koyach mitzad tumah, but it wasn't Avodah Zarah. But when you're in a free fall, that means when somebody does an Aveira, if he doesn't take hold of himself and ask himself, what am I doing? Is this what I want to do? Doesn't take hold, then it's a free fall. Then the next day he can be doing something else. He can be doing a third day even worse. Now, the pasuk says, "V'lo yachmod ish es artzecha," that the end of the Sedra talks about oila regel. And the pasuk says, don't worry about leaving over your house. You're afraid that someone's going to come in and rob and steal everything and you'll lose all of your possessions. So the pasuk says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, V'lo yachmod ish es artzecha. You are not going to lose your possessions because no one's going to want to take them. And the Gemara learns from that, V'lo yachmod ish es artzecha, prat lemish ein lo eretz. That means if someone did not own any real estate, a house or land, he had no chiyuv to go up to Yerushalayim to be oila regel. So there were plenty of people who didn't go, and the people who had houses and land, they went up to be oila regel. And tzaddikim used to say on this pasuk that lemisha en lo eretz, that if he has no artzias, gashmias, that he's busy running after all the days of his life, then he doesn't have to go up to become elevated, inspired, overwhelmed by the Kedusha, because he was not heavy into the artzias of Olam Hazeh. So he doesn't need that reinforcement when it came Yom Tiv. And the Medrash says on this pasuk that there were 2 very wealthy brothers in Ashkelon. And they lived next door to a goy that they were very good with. But they were rich and they had lots of land. And this goy decided, these brothers, they always go up on their holiday to Yerushalayim. This year I'm going to ransack. They have items in their house that are so outstanding, I want to get them. And it came Erev Yom Tiv, and he waited till Yom Tiv started, and on the first day he went over to the house, the Medrash says, and he wanted to open the door and go in, and he sees through the window that the 2 brothers are there. And he's thinking, what happened? They didn't go to Yerushalayim like all the others went. But maybe they're delayed, so he waited another day, the Medrash says, and came back, hoping that they had now left but they were still there. At the end of Yom Tiv, the 2 brothers come into the goy, and they brought him a souvenir. The Medrash says this, a souvenir from Yerushalayim. So he said to them, from Yerushalayim, I went every day to your house. I saw you in the house. So the goy realized that there was a miracle that looked like they were in the house, but they weren't. And the Medrash says that he said, Baruch Hashem Elokei Yisrael, your God really watches over you and protects you. And that really is the case when we come to each and every item that we want to do. If we cloak it and we dress it and we have on our machshava, dibur, and maisa all the goodness of what's being done in Olam Hazeh, that we are propelling the mitzvah to Gavei Meroimim, to the highest of the high, then it becomes out a polished nachas ruach to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, there is a question that is asked. We know that the Medrash, the Agadita, all of this came to Klal Yisrael after the Luchos were broken by the Luchos Shnias, by the second. The Torah, the Chumash, and Yehoshua, just the book of Yehoshua, because they had to come into Eretz Yisrael, was given on Har Sinai. But as part of Har Sinai, the extension was that later, all of this, the Midrashim, and it came out at that point, and the Meforshim are all over the Chazal, and asking why didn't they, by Maimed Har Sinai, which was the biggest moment in their existence, standing there al Hahor, why at that point didn't everything come down from the Heicholos into the Machshava, to the Mahus of Klal Yisrael? And the answer that is given is that we know that there is nothing, no matter how big a person could be, that there is nothing that comes close to a leiv nishbar v'nidke Elokim lo sivze, and a broken heart, a contrite person. Because when a person goes into a frame of mind of not being filled with ego or possession of backbone, with a defiance or with whatever, it could never stand on equal par with the machshava of a person that is brokenhearted and whatever. And they once asked Rav Wolfson what brought him close, because I remember in the days Rav Wolfson was a very big chassid of the old Skver Rebbe, and I even went with him Shabbosos a few times over the years to Skver. But in the later years, he, Baruch Hashem, was very makusher to the Lubavitcher. He went every Erev Rosh Chodesh to the oil and all these things. So he answered and said what brought him close was that when he used to sit by the koisel and daven and say Tillim, he had in his machshava almost always leiv nishbar v'nidke Elokim lo sivze, a broken, contrite heart. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will never leave the person. And the first time that he came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, so the Rebbe turned to him and smiled and said, Leiv nishbar v'nidke Elokim lo sivze. And that was like a magnet to him to draw him close. And I want to conclude along that line, because it says that when they gave the machzis hashekel, ha'osher lo yarbe, v'hadal lo yamit, that a poor man couldn't give less than the half of the shekel. But the rich guy who could have added on 1,000 or 100 or 50, he wasn't allowed to give any more than the half shekel. And it was tsar. The Meforshim say, it's brought, that it was disappointing to both of them. So the poor guy maybe was so destitute that he wanted to give less because he didn't have. So it was a tsar. But what was the tsar for the rich guy? He'osher lo yarbe. What was he pained? He gave the 50 cents. He gave the silver dollar, the $50. He could afford it, no problem. So what was his pain? So the answer the Meforshim say is that what is the reason, I'm just giving an example, why people, if they're not in first class on a plane, they're not comfortable. Because if they have to sit together with all the regular people, it bothers them. What? I'm going to sit in economy together with every guy that can't afford to barely be on the plane. And I have to sit with him. That was his tsar. He'asher lo yarbe. That you have to be like all of Klal Yisrael. You can't be above and sit in the front row that, well, I gave $100,000 and these poor guys in the back, they could barely afford the 50 cents. So that was the tsar to the gevir. And it really comes after the story of Lev Nishbar V'Nidke, because it's all under that same umbrella, a humble spirit, a humble frame of mind, and something that could come out and bring the shine. You know, in our Sedra, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu, he couldn't bring himself to write in Parshas Ba'aloscha V'Ish Moshe, Onav Ma'od Mikolo Adama Asher Al Paneo Adama. So when he wrote the word Onav, which is supposed to be written Ayin Nun Yud Vav, he only wrote Ayin Nun Vav, and he left out the Yud. But there was enough ink for the Yud too. And when he put his hand on the ink and he rubbed his forehead, that's where the Koran or Ponav, that his shine was so tremendous, like staring in the sun, that a person can't do. But why? Because a Yid shines forth when his anivas is polished and brought into realization in its fullest luster. Have a good week. Bracha v'hatzlacha.